Taiwan scrambles jets as 18 Chinese planes buzz during a senior U.S. official visit. Taiwan scrambled fighter jets on Friday as 18 Chinese aircraft buzzed the island, crossing the sensitive midline of the Taiwan Strait, in response to a senior U.S. official holding talks in Taipei. China had earlier announced combat drills and denounced what it called collusion between the island, which it claims as part of its territory, and the United States. U.S. Undersecretary for Economic Affairs Keith Krach arrived in Taipei on Thursday for a three-day visit, the most senior State Department official to come to Taiwan in 4 decades, to which China had promised a necessary response. The U.S. State Department has said Krach, who arrived in Taipei on Thursday afternoon, is in Taiwan for a memorial service on Saturday for former President Lee Teng-hui, who was revered by many on the island and internationally as the father of Taiwan's democracy. But Beijing has watched with growing alarm the ever-closer relationship between Taipei and Washington, and has stepped up military exercises near the island, including 2 days of large-scale air and sea drills last week. With the U.S. presidential election looming in November, Sino-U.S. relations are already under huge strain from a trade war, U.S. digital security concerns and the coronavirus pandemic. Taiwan said 18 Chinese aircraft were involved on Friday, far more than in previous such encounters. September 18, 2 H-6 bombers, 8 J-16 fighters, 4 J-10 fighters and 4 J-11 fighters crossed the midline of the Taiwan Strait and entered Taiwan's southwesterlies, the Defense Ministry said in an English-language tweet. ROCAF scrambled fighters, and deployed air defense missile system to monitor the activities. The ROCAF, Taiwan's Air Force, has scrambled frequently in recent months in response to Chinese intrusions. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who has led the Trump administration's rhetorical offensive against China, accused Beijing of bluster when asked about the Chinese activity. "We sent the delegation to a funeral, and the Chinese have apparently responded by military blustering. I'll leave it at that," he told a news conference on a visit to Guyana. The ministry showed a map of the flight paths of Chinese jets crossing the Taiwan Strait midline, which combat aircraft from both sides normally avoid passing through. Taiwan's Liberty Times newspaper said Taiwanese jets had scrambled 17 times over 4 hours, warning China's Air Force to stay away. It also showed a picture of missiles being loaded onto an F-16 fighter at the Hualien Air Base on Taiwan's east coast. Reasonable, necessary action. In Beijing, Chinese Defense Ministry spokesman Ren Guoqiang said Friday's maneuvers, about which he gave no details, involved the People's Liberation Army's Eastern Theater Command. They are reasonable, necessary action aimed at the current situation in the Taiwan Strait and protecting national sovereignty and territorial integrity, Ren said. He said Taiwan was a purely internal Chinese affair and accused its ruling Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, of stepping up collusion with the United States. Trying to use Taiwan to control China or rely on foreigners to build oneself up was wishful thinking and futile. Those who play with fire will get burned, Ren said. Taiwan's presidential office urged China to exercise restraint, and urged the Taiwanese not to be alarmed, saying the military had a grasp on the situation. Government officials in Taiwan, including President Tsai Ing-wen, have expressed concern in recent weeks that an accidental military encounter could spark a wider conflict. Hu Zijun, editor of China's widely read state-backed Global Times tabloid, wrote on his Weibo microblog that the drills were preparation for an attack on Taiwan should the need arise, and that they enabled intelligence gathering about Taiwan's defense systems. If the U.S. Secretary of State or Defense Secretary visits Taiwan, People's Liberation Army fighters should fly over Taiwan Island, and directly exercise in the skies above it, he added. Chinese fighter jets briefly crossed the midline of the Taiwan Strait last month while U.S. Health Secretary Alex Azar was in Taipei, and last week China carried out 2 days of large-scale drills off Taiwan's southwestern coast. The United States, like most countries, has official ties only with China, not Taiwan, though Washington is the island's main arms supplier and most important international backer. This week, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations had lunch with Taiwan's top envoy in New York. China's UN mission said it had lodged stern representations over the meeting.